What's the point What's the point of the school? Rediscovering the heart of education. Our brain, tortoise mind. Why intelligence increase when you think less. And Intelligence in the Flesh, the very last book, which we will have to wait 2 months for reading it because it's not yet on the market. And that brings us back to the title of today's lecture, Intelligence in the Flesh, which I'm sure you're going to enjoy with all your body. Please welcome Guy Claxton.
Thank you very much indeed, Patricia. Welcome, everybody. This is the third and last of my presentations at this conference, and it's the most risky for me because it involves talking about new work, which is represented in the book that Patricia was kind enough to mention, which will be out in a couple of months. But it's still very much a work in progress. So if any of you would like to find me or raise questions, I hope there'll be some time for questions, and give me some feedback, whether this makes sense to you, whether you can see any more implications for education. I would be very happy to have a conversation with you. The book is more about the science of the new science that is convincing us that body and mind are much more closely tied together than our cultures, most of the people in this room, I guess, our cultures traditionally assume. But obviously, if this new idea is right, if intelligence is a function not just of the mind or the brain, but of the body as a whole, that has enormous implications for education, fundamental implications for education. So let's hope that some of these ideas will spark some discussion at the end of this session and over the rest of this conference as we go along. Well, we all know, everybody knows, this is common knowledge that mind and brain interact. You know all this, and I know all this. We, sometimes when we're facing a difficult problem, we say, oh, let me sleep on it. Let me refresh myself in body and mind, and it will improve. When you wake up in the morning, or if you're feeling a little tired during the day, you want to be more mentally alert, you splash cold water on your face. That physical action changes the performance of your mind. We know that illness affects concentration and judgment, as Professor Robert Sternberg was saying in his talk last night. And even our friend Socrates over there knew this only too well. He said, even in thinking, which is supposed to require least assistance from the body, everyone knows that serious mistakes in thinking often happen through physical ill health. We know that emotional distress, the implications, the causality goes in the other direction. If you've broken up with a long-time partner, you lose your appetite, your posture collapses, you pay less attention to your personal physical well-being. We know that the kind of understanding, the kind of mental understanding that we call getting a joke is a physical response. It's not just a mental response. You move, you laugh, your body reacts holistically to a joke. Getting a joke is quite a different experience from understanding a joke. But it is a form of understanding, of course. Our good friend William Shakespeare at the beginning of Macbeth had one of the three witches say, by the pricking of my thumbs, something evil this way comes. You can tell things, your perception, your understanding manifests in physical ways. The hair stands up on the back of your neck when you're frightened or excited. So we know that these things are implicated. This is a picture here of a man who used to be what we call the poet laureate, the national poet in Britain. He's called Andrew Motion. When he wants to, a day comes when he wants to spend his time writing a poem, he's developed a particular strategy to improve the complex quality of mind which is required for writing a poem. And you know what he does? He takes a remedy for a physical cold. In England we call them Beecham's powders. Or I don't know, there are all kinds of different names for these things. But he takes one of these things because he's discovered that even though he doesn't have a cold, he can trick his body into moving into the kind of melancholic inward state that is conducive to having a poem. So there are all kinds of ways in which that's not such a familiar example, but it's true for all of us. We know that our physical appearance is powerfully relevant to our well-being, to our social communication, to all kinds of activities. We spend billions of pounds and dollars and euros on cosmetics, on tattoos. Even when you're wearing a headscarf, there is a highly complex and sophisticated industry in designing ever more elegant and sophisticated burqa or hijab, piercings. This is a man who's got it slightly wrong in terms of trying to adjust and improve his appearance. So the nature of the physical body, of course, is powerfully relevant to how we present ourselves, how we feel about ourselves, and so on. We signal not just our emotions, but the kinds of thinking, our mental state, our cognitive state, through our bodies. Again, through our posture, but most particularly through our facial expressions. David Perkins mentioned in his talk on the opening evening the work of the Harvard philosopher Scheffler and his book In Praise of the Cognitive Emotions. Traditionally, we think of emotion and cognition as if they were somehow separate and even antagonistic. So what about the notion of cognitive emotions? What is this man's cognitive state? Puzzled or confused? What's going on in this man's head? He's worried, he's in a bit of a fix, he doesn't know what to say next. This woman, what's she feeling? Frustrated, upset. I love this girl's expression. Do you really expect me to believe that? Right? Here's our good friend Homer Simpson, who is demonstrating a claim in the... What's the matter? No, now I'm not working. Am I working? Okay, good. Thank you very much. Who is demonstrating a claim in the literature that when people are trying to remember different kinds of events from their past, their eyes move in different directions. So Homer is trying to remember something or other and his eyes are going up in this direction. A direct correlation. I was just reading a research report in bed this morning about why, have you noticed how young children stick their tongues out when they're concentrating? What's that about? It's a reflection of the deep evolutionary connection between intelligence and gesture. The way we think, the way we talk, the way we move our hands are intimately tied together in our evolution. And I'll say more about that. So something about sticking your tongue out when you're really trying to concentrate, or when you're trying not to do the usual thing, but to do something new and difficult, when you're trying to inhibit. Interestingly, the more difficult the task the children are doing, the more likely they are to stick their tongue out to the right side of their mouth. Like that side, rather than the other side. Because that reflects inhibitory activity in the left hemisphere of the brain. Now, I don't know about you, but I find all of this very interesting and suggestive of things that we might think about more. We diagnose the intelligence of a child on the basis of their physical appearance, don't we? Not just the answers they give to our questions, but to their eye contact, their facial expression, the shape of their face, the nature of their musculature. You can look at someone and have a pretty good guess about the level of intelligence, the level of background, the kind of family they come from. Our cognitive habits are mirrored in the physical habits, in the muscular habits that we build up around us. So, we know all that. All of that is pretty true, and it's pretty obvious, and in everyday life, we rely on these connections. The fact that physical presentations are diagnostic, are indicative, for example, of what's going on in people's minds. But in academia and in education, how much attention do we pay to this? It's like, as normal, functioning, intuitive human beings, we are perfectly comfortable with the deep, dynamic connections between body and mind. But as teachers, as academics, as thinkers, how much talk is there in this conference? How many lectures have you been to where people have been talking not just about the mind, but about the body-mind, about the connections between the two? And ideas are changing quite rapidly about these kinds of connections. But so let me paint a picture as part of the historical background. Traditionally, the body has been tended to be minimized and marginalized, hasn't it, in our approach to education. What is the status of physical education in your school? Does it rank up there alongside mathematics and science and English and Spanish? No. It gets less time on the curriculum, doesn't it? It's way down there in terms of the hierarchy of esteem. Is it in Spain? Yeah. As it is in England? It's treated as what we would call in England one of the Cinderella subjects, like drama and technology in the hierarchy. We tend to see the body as a vehicle requiring maintenance. We have to feed it, we have to attend to it, but it's a way of getting around. Ken Robinson says academics tend to view their minds simply as a way, their bodies as a way of getting their minds to a meeting. And then it plays no role, and then it has no further function. It's what enables you to get from one place to the other. We think of our bodies not as an integral part of our identities, but as a possession. We say, I have a body, don't we? Is it the same in Spanish? I have a body, not I am a body, but I have a body. As if somehow or other the owner was other than the body itself. The owner was a more cerebral or more mysterious entity. Traditionally, we've seen the body as being rather potentially misleading and corruptible in our culture, as less secure, of less value. St. Paul, in his gospel, in his letter to the Romans, said, "Nothing good dwells in me that is in my flesh. All that is good about me is mental, spiritual, ethereal. All that is base and untrustworthy and lusty and corruptible is physical, is bodily." We treat the body in education very much as if it's to be ignored except when it's troublesome or when our sports team is doing well. Don't we? Yeah? That tends to be, and that's the way we've traditionally treated emotions in education. They're of no relevance in the classroom unless they're getting in the way of learning. And then we have to think about anxiety or anger management. The whole school of emotional intelligence, Daniel Goleman and others, began when it was first introduced, it tended to be reduced to kind of anger management techniques, ways of being able to cope with your emotions, to control them or suppress them, so that you could then ignore them again. You could put them out of the way and get back to your more cerebral, intellectual activities, which is what school was supposed to be about. And we've certainly treated these things as irrelevant to intelligence.